All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
And hello, wherever you are. Thank you for joining us on this Tuesday. The crew is here today. Kim is alongside.
Kim, how are you?
Virtually.
Morning.
And Tony is here.
Hey, Tony.
Tony, what job is this today? The 11th job you've worked?
Today, second, but I still have
Second
two
job.
more to do later. After
Two
I'm
more to
done.
do later. That's the it's the work ethic. It's what's made America the
I got
special
bills to pay.
nation.
It's
We're
like
a
that old
worker
Living Color
nation,
bit.
everyone.
Remember?
What's that?
Remember that old Living Color bit? Remember that Living Color?
Oh, was
bit?
that like a
You have
Jamaican
6
family,
jobs,
or
I
what
have
was it?
8.
Yeah,
it was
right.
the-
Yeah, just something like a Jamaican.
You like that right now?
Yeah, no, I know. It's the hustle, man. Everybody's doing the hustle. We're all on the hustle, you know.
Yep.
Thank you for all being here and supporting the show. You can smash the like button early. Do it now while you're thinking about it. Then you don't have to do it anymore. But I'll remind you throughout. The thumbs up help us. And thank you, all of you who've helped support us. We're a crowd-funded show. And many of you are part of the crowd and part of the funding. So we appreciate that. Wow. Yeah. Let's get on with it.
Show.
This is a big day. As you know, there is a target letter that apparently was sent to the former President Trump. And he announced the fact that he received this target letter, an indictment letter. He announced it on his Truth Social network. You always sense, even in the darkest hours, when he gets bad news like this, he's trying to kind of steal the spotlight from the big announcement that Jack Smith could, or any prosecutor could step to the microphone with. So I felt like there's just a little strategic aspect to Trump's release of that information on Sunday. So, Tony, run a little bit, if you would, please, of that CBS thing. By the way, David Cay Johnston joins the next hour, and he's also going to speak about the indictments that Trump is now targeted by, or if that makes sense. He's now likely to be indicted on crimes that would preclude him from being president. So it's sort of an interesting watershed moment in this continued assembly line of charges that seem to be finding their way to Donald Trump. What was that, Kim?
Just a question about a target letter. Is there a law or some type of policy where if you are the target of an investigation, you have to receive one of these letters? Like at some point, you have to be informed by the government that you are a target of what they're investigating?
That's a good question for David Cay Johnston, or it's maybe Googleable. I don't know the answer to that, but I know that
Did you just
generally
tell me to Google it?
I generally
Google it.
I generally
Okay.
I know in white collar situations they send the target letter.
Okay.
But I've got to think that if you're about to be busted, as the head of a major crime ring, that they may not send you a target letter. You know what I mean?
Joe Box and Little Anthony.
Yeah, I don't think Joe Box and Little Anthony got the target letters.
Yeah.
But here's a little drill down from CBS this morning.
And Scott, we had talked about how vast this investigation has been, this historic investigation. What can we read into that, and what have we really learned about how it could lead us to where we are right now?
This has the potential to be so much different than the federal prosecution in Miami, which, by the way, has a court hearing today into those classified records and the alleged attempts to conceal those records from a federal investigation. In the January 6th case, the bandwidth, the broadness of this case is seemingly limitless. It includes not just who and what gave rise to the deadly attack here on the U.S. Capitol grounds January 6, 2021, but what became of all those fake electors, all those electors who try to become alternates and to change the verified election results of the swing states in 2020, Wisconsin, Michigan, Arizona, Georgia. also alleged threats against election officials and election workers, some of which we heard about during those public hearings last year of the House Select January 6th committee. And what became of all that money? The gobs of money that were raised through those fake, baseless election fraud claims. There was a lot of money raised. Federal investigators have reportedly been looking into how it was used and where it was used. There's also more. I mean, there are all these other components we don't know about because the witness list seems to be so large. Yeah, there were some of those fake electors who were called to testify before this grand jury. Key members of the Trump inner circle, including his vice president, Mike Pence, called to speak to this grand jury. There seems to be a sense here that if and when criminal charges come from Jack Smith, for the
By the way, they
January
have
6th
on screen now. Tony, just stop for a second. Actual tweets that they weren't tweets because they're on Truth Social, but they're picked up and essentially then repurposed on Twitter and elsewhere. Classic Trump. Even in telling you that he received the target letter, he starts with deranged Jack Smith, the prosecutor with Joe Biden's DOJ. Sent a letter stating that I'm a target of the January 6th grand jury investigation. So even as this report continues, you can see on screen those watching on YouTube, and I'm also just sharing for the people on podcast, that that's the nature of Trump's posts. They're classic. They're attacking, they're rambling, and they're angry. Anyway, go ahead, Tony, and then we'll finish this up.
Large-scale case file.
Yeah, and Scott, just not just that. I mean, members of his own family have testified, and we sort of speculated that as the list of witnesses got closer and closer to the president, that this was a possibility. We understand that some of those who testified were offered limited immunity. Can you explain what that is and what it signals about the potential scope of a possible indictment?
Though we can't confirm it in this singular case or singular investigation, it's quite common in the federal criminal system for key witnesses, sometimes even eventual co-defendants, to get some type of agreement with the prosecutions to give their testimony.
That's good.
Give
So
aid
it's
to the prosecution.
Right. It's typical for people to make deals. Got it. That really tells you where we are. Somebody mentioned in the chat, which I was trying to watch, that Jack Smith announced this yesterday. I didn't see that. Maybe he did, but Trump got the letter on Sunday. And by the way, that's one of the things. Was that in the report? Maybe I was reading comments at the same time listening, so it might have been in the report. But if it wasn't, one of the things that Trump was angry about was the fact that he would receive this letter on a Sunday. And how it's just not.
Dare you interfere in the holy day?
Right.
This is a word from the Lord, and he's not happy.
That's right. It reminds me when God found
when they raided Mar-a-Lago, God didn't like that.
That's right. When they raided Mar-a-Lago, God didn't like that. But the important thing.
See, Obama would love to be the Antichrist.
Right. So, but just to be clear, Trump mentioned Sunday as the affront to all that is holy, but Trump was at political rallies on Sunday. So it's not as though, Trump was obviously not in a place of worship. Nick says the RNC chairwoman doesn't like the term fake electors. She was greatly upset by the term. Okay.
What does she want them to be called?
Yeah, what terminology would better apply?
Extras?
No. Pretty funny. Look, I want to talk to David Cay Johnston about a couple of things, and I'd like to talk to him about these charges, the legal aspects that I say might legally preclude Trump from becoming president, although, as you're aware, it's the official position of this show, as informed by all of the experts. I would say head of that list would be David Katz, that Trump will not be in a courtroom and none of this will get started before the election, sadly. But we'll double check it with him. I'll ask about the timing with David Cay Johnston as well. But I did want to touch on, and I'm going to do this in the second half hour here, because I want to do some law and disorder that's not all related to Trump and stuff. But look, that's the news of the day, so we just thought we'd lead with it. But a second Trump term would be very different than the first. A second Trump term, there'd be preparation for. You know, Trump didn't think he'd win, and the people around Trump didn't think he'd win. And if you read the Michael Lewis book, you know how much they really didn't think they were going to win. They literally, had other plans, for the day after the election, like to go on vacation. And then when they won, they had to pursue this transition and ramp up an administration and get all of these people into various positions of authority and management. And they had none of those things in place. The second Trump administration would bring the chaos of the first Trump administration, the political recriminations, the coterie of people around Trump who are staunch loyalists, coterie a ding word, staunch loyalists and ready to do his bidding regardless of how illegal it is. And then Trump himself, and this is what we'll talk about, has spoken of, alongside Bannon and others who have equally weighed in on this issue, how a second administration would essentially consolidate power around the presidency, around the chief executive position, so that everything that they want to do, like all roads leading to Trump, would be done in the second administration. They would completely undermine the ability of regulatory agencies from the FCC, from the FBI, even Justice, certainly the EPA. They would all be undermined so that the presidency could take on the power there. Now, the power essentially to run government in the way that they want. So you can say, well, this is un-American. This is not what the people want. It's tyranny of the minority. I'd suggest, yeah, you may be right about all those things if you say it. But they are upfront about this being what they want to do. Steve Bannon, and I can give you some quotes from him along the way, he has spoken at length about the fact that he feels the administrative state needs to be disassembled, and in so doing, let the power rest with the chief executive. So that is what, at least they're upfront about it. That's what they want in a second Trump administration. They will be prepped and they will bring that chaos, but they'll bring it in a way that has a coherence to it. And it'll be scary, I think. So I believe a second Trump administration really is an extraordinarily dangerous thing on a level far, far greater than what we've just seen. What's that, Kim?
Just put an exclamation point on what you just said. I was watching this morning this video of Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, and he was being interviewed on CNN by Caitlin Collins. And she asks him, given everything with Trump calling to pressure you to change the election, would you still support him for 2024? And he kind of hems and haws and goes on and on about things. And finally, she, at the end of this interview, she, boxes him into a corner on this question. And he says, look, I handled it. Basically, I handled it. I protected the Constitution and the laws of this country and this state when they needed to be protected. But I'll tell you, he said, that no matter what, Trump will be better than Biden. Anything will be better than Biden-Harris, is what he said. So here's a guy who was pressured by the former president, allegedly, to change the election, who had to stand up against what is supposed to be the most honorable person we can find amongst ourselves to lead us. And, he's saying, I had to, I can handle him. I can handle him, and he'll be better than Biden. Okay.
They've demonized Biden to this point that it's quite extraordinary. And, of course, they've made hay on cultural issues, wedge issues. You'd think this country is filled with trans people, the way trans people are so much a part of the conversation, and trans rights, the rights of this minuscule minority, is something that the Democrats in general are out in front for. even within the Democratic Party, when it comes to issues around trans people, there can be disagreement. But the idea somehow that a conversation around trans people should be dictating the future of this country, it's absurd. I mean, it's utterly absurd. But they have found it to be an effective political cudgel, and they've been using it. Here's something on the second Trump presidency. The combined effect of appointing only loyalists and cowing the bureaucracy would be both to remove constraints on Mr. Trump and to ensure his wishes are acted on more often. In his first term, Mr. Trump's opponents took some comfort from the idea that not all people around him were true believers and were willing to stall his most alarming ideas. The New York Times ran an anonymous piece by a political appointee who claimed there was an internal resistance within the administration that acted as a check on presidential power. In a second Trump term, there will not be any, quote, grown-ups in the room, as Mr. Trump's detractors called such people. Once a second administration under Trump had bent the bureaucracy to its will, what policies would it pursue? The department by department plans being drawn up at AFI, Heritage, conservative think tanks, and elsewhere give some guidance. They involve some predictable areas of culture wars, also completing a wall along the border with Mexico, directing all federal officials to consider only people's biological sex rather than self-identified gender. But some of the more putative policy agendas are both sweeping in scope and more of a break with past Republican orthodoxy. In the economy, the new right is enthusiastic about the kind of industrial policy the Biden administration has pursued. No one in Ohio cares that the Wall Street Journal editorial board doesn't like the CHIPS bill on free market economic grounds. That's what J.D. Vance, a senator, said. That was at a think tank meeting. Mr. Trump supporters would go further. Mr. Vance advocates taxing companies that shift work offshore, and so on. They get into some policy here. But the second Trump term would completely undermine the Justice Department, which I didn't think could be more undermined than it was under Bill Barr. But it will undermine whatever federal agencies might remain and essentially disassemble them. So, it is coming out of the woods on dictatorship. And if you think minorities can't become dictatorships, then you don't remember Nazi Germany. The Nazis were a minority. Hitler got into power as a minority force. It can happen. I don't mean to be too dramatic. I just feel like this is sort of a dramatic moment. All right, I need a palate cleanser, and I need some other news not related to Trump. So,
the Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah,
getting worked up a little bit.
I'm
stressed out.
Well, I'm. I also don't want to bum the audience out with too much stuff on the coming dictatorship. So I can I can chit a little bit. Close the marky mouth on that. Do you, Tony, have my Law and Disorder? Maybe that's a way to go.
Yep, I'm ready.
The news isn't good necessarily, but it's different. Here's some Law and Disorder.
In the criminal justice system, the people,
pimps, addicts, thieves, bums, winos, girls who can't keep an address, and men who don't care,
are represented by two separate yet equally important groups.
A cop, a flatfoot, a bull, a dick, John Law, you're the fuzz, the heat, you're poison, you're trouble, you're bad news.
These are their stories.
Came from a California fireman on Twitter into our show. You can always reach us on Twitter. I'm at Mark T Live. And if you want to drop a line to the show, you can always do so. TheMarkThompsonShow@gmail.com. So happy to look at whatever stories you push us and also respond to any other
I've
questions you have.
received a lot of positive letters.
Yeah. In-N-Out bans employees from wearing masks. In-N-Out did not respond to a request to comment on a mask policy that they've just begun. Quote, we are introducing new mask guidelines that emphasize the importance of customer service and the ability to show our associates smiles and other facial features while considering the health and well-being of all individuals. We believe this policy will also help to promote clear and effective communication both with our customers and among our associates. The policy goes on, this is bans employees from wearing masks unless the worker has a valid medical reason and a note which describes that reason.
Good day, sir.
Exactly.
Since when do you need a doctor's note to wear a mask?
Since you started working at In-N-Out.
It's all there, black and white, clear as crystal.
That's what they said. This is, now, I actually, when I go into these places, and you do go into these fast food places and find employees, even Starbucks, wearing masks. I mean, not to a person, but they are there wearing masks. I think that's kind of a cool thing. I mean, by the way, leave aside COVID, I just kind of like it. You know, you're not spraying all over my food or whatever. I mean, you know, people.
Who wants people breathing on their stuff? Right.
In-N-Out says masks are not in, they're out. And the Centers for Disease Control considers mask wearing a valid strategy to prevent the spread of airborne diseases, so it doesn't necessarily track, but so it goes. There is a lawsuit in Los Gatos. A woman is taking on a Thai restaurant. Dragon Balls is what the dish is called. Dragon Balls at this Los Gatos Thai restaurant is such a spicy dish that they caused chemical burns to this woman, she says. She claims that the appetizer, called Dragon Balls, was so spicy, she suffered chemical burns to her vocal cords, esophagus, and the inside of her right nostril.
Oh, man.
She says that her throat and voice have been damaged by this appetizer at the coup d'etat, and she's incurred permanent injuries and will forever be damaged, according to the lawsuit. She's suing the downtown Los Gatos restaurant and its owner, along with the chef who cooked the item. She's also including the waitress who took her order.
What? What's in the Dragon Balls?
And anyone at the restaurant that day or before who in any way, quote, influenced, designed, prepared, or participated in creating the Dragon Ball dish. She went to dinner with a friend at the downtown North Santa Cruz Avenue restaurant.
Okay.
They ordered appetizers, including Dragon Balls. The dish is on the restaurant's website. It's there now as spicy chicken balls with mint, shallot, green, cilantro, kaffir lime leaf, and chili. It's $11, by the way. If you get it in order, you get extra points. Mm-hmm. Well, it's mint, shallot, green onion, cilantro, kaffir lime leaf, and chili. $11. The dish was advertised as spicy. So Ms. Walia, who is the plaintiff in this case, asked her server to have it made with less spice, as she does not tolerate spicy foods. The server said that they would have the chef make them less spicy.
Instead, they made it more spicy.
In the complaint, she alleges, I should say, that almost immediately after she began eating the Dragon Balls, she felt her entire mouth, the roof of her mouth, her tongue, her throat, her nose burn like fire.
Ouch.
Her eyes and nose watered, Kim. She began coughing.
Why are you yelling?
She started to lose her voice, was diagnosed later with internal chemical burns from the chilies in the Dragon Balls. a supervisor at Coupe de Thai, said that the restaurant had never previously had a patron say that they'd been burned by a dish and needing medical attention. Dragon Balls are spicy, said the supervisor, but, quote, we do not use too much chili spice in Dragon Balls. But, maybe this is an important part of this case, it is not possible for the appetizer to be made in a, quote, mild version because the chili is inside the balls, according to the supervisor. If a patron wants to order Dragon Balls but says they cannot handle spicy foods, they are typically encouraged to order something else.
Right.
What?
So what you end up with, and that's the reason that the waitress is included here, is a situation in which you need the wait person to say, hey, you don't want this dish.
What he's got going here is a situation.
It's a situation. So it might be more complicated, this case, than meets the eye. I mean, what you and I might look at it and go, this is stupid. But the reality is, if there's real damage here, maybe somebody is at fault. The lawsuit says that the restaurant's owner, chef, server, and others involved with this appetizer, quote, failed to take precautions by consulting with health officials or emergency service personnel regarding the risks associated with serving too much Thai chili in an appetizer like Dragon Balls. So it's
all there, black and white, clear as crystal.
Yeah, I think on this one it might be there black and white in some sense. I don't know. Meantime, on the other side of town in Law and Disorder, 3 banks have been robbed by what they're calling the sticky note bandit, dressed as a woman. I love that plan. I really,
it's a wild idea.
I really
just might
do
work.
endorse the dressing as a woman if you're a guy and you want to hold up a bank. A man dressed as a woman walked into 3 Texas banks this month and handed tellers sticky notes, threatening and demanding cash.
Wait, how do we know this is a man dressed as a woman? How do we know this is just not a woman?
I don't think it was a very sophisticated disguise, is my guess.
The hair is odd.
I think
but there's
close
boobs.
up.
There's boobs.
So
I'm just saying.
Well, I think the disguise, as I say, was not, it wasn't a Hollywood quality. I think, it was a crude disguise, more to disguise identity perhaps than gender. Although, anyway, Texas officials described the suspect as 5'8" black man with a thin to medium build. Actually, sounds like an attractive woman,
right?
Yeah. During the last 2 robberies, he wore a black wig, black sunglasses, a blue medical mask, a green woman-style sweater, a black woman's ballet flats, and carried a black purse. Stop, you're turning me on.
What?
He then allegedly handed the tellers threatening notes demanding cash. Then the teller walked away from the counter. They locked themselves in the back room for safety, apparently, in the last of the 3 robberies. The suspect remained in the bank lobby for a short time, then fled the scene on foot without any money. So, Texas authorities and the FBI are on this one.
Y'all can all go to hell, and I'm going back to Texas.
That's right. Well, the sticky note bandit. And finally, let me tell you of this. A major settlement, and I've been wanting to tell you this story for a couple of weeks, actually, just to keep running out of time. A retired Army colonel has reached a court settlement of nearly $1 million in a sexual assault lawsuit against Air Force General John Hyten, who served as vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs. This is a big deal. The settlement with the U.S. government ends more than 4 years of investigations, reviews, and congressional digging into the matter, which delayed but ultimately did not defeat Hyten's nomination for vice chairman in 2019. Again, this is someone who was nominated as the vice chair of the Joint Chiefs. Served 2 years. Didn't seek a second term after that. Army Colonel Catherine Splestower, who served as Heighton's aide in 2017, filed this lawsuit. And in the settlement, which was reached in U.S. District Court, the federal government is going to pay her $975,000.
What?
Close to $1 million because of, again, this is a sexual assault case. This is not sexual harassment. This is sexual assault. In an interview with the Associated Press in 2019, Splestower, said that Heighton subjected her to a series of unwanted sexual advances by kissing, hugging, and rubbing up against her in 2017 while she was one of his top aides. She said she repeatedly pushed him away, told him to stop, that he tried to derail her military career after she rebuffed him. He vigorously denies all of this. He, at that confirmation hearing for his Joint Chiefs appointment, had his wife seated behind him. And by the way, Splestower, who was the assistant, was looking on from a short distance away. An internal investigation there at the Air Force determined that there was insufficient evidence to charge him or recommend discipline. And a senior Air Force official said at the time that investigations also found no evidence of Splestower lying. So that was kind of a meh investigation, is what you learn. The number of reported sexual assaults in the military has increased nearly every year since 2006, and while the services have made inroads in making it easier and safer for service members to come forward, they suggest here, it still remains a highly unreported crime. Look, so they settle for $1 million. The problem with, and it's a huge problem, with the R word in the military, I can't say it because I'll get demonetized. I might be demonetized just based on reading the story and relating it to you. Sorry about that, but you know what it is, the extreme sexual violence. The incidents of that are off the charts in the military. And one of the reasons is there's no one to complain to. You can't complain to your supervisor because oftentimes your supervisor is the perpetrator. You can't complain to anybody else who might be at your supervisor's level because they're all in league together. I mean, there really is a sense that you are alone. It's a horrible both feeling and also predicament legally to be in because all of your legal recourse is essentially cut off to you. So when they say the Air Force investigated and they could find no evidence, I mean, it's almost laughable, isn't it? You guys investigating yourselves? It's the same thing you look at police commissions or medical commissions. You know, when these are situations that require some kind of outside objective investigation, and they don't get it. So some of the reforms, to be fair, have suggested that there be outside parties and outside panels with investigatory powers. But for the most part, there haven't been significant inroads in that area. I think it's a reminder of how intense an environment you can face and how women particularly can be victims of all sorts of both sexual harassment and in this case, potentially sexual assault. They settle for close to $1 million. That's Law and Disorder for today.
Tune in again next time for more Law and Disorder on The Mark Thompson Show.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out there.
We've got David Cay Johnston joining after 11 o'clock on the West Coast for those watching in Pacific time. For those listening in the second hour, David will be here. And I'll just remind you, we'll talk about, of course, the Trump target letter. We'll also talk about the charges that are likely to come to Donald Trump and how they might actually preclude. I mean, again, if these charges were to come to pass and were you to get a conviction, you'd have to really fast track it. But they would preclude Donald Trump from becoming president of the United States. Kind of wild. And I don't mean to make it too Trump intensive today, although he is in the news, and we didn't do any Trump yesterday. So I'm always trying to be aware of that balance. But I have other Trump news, and I have a chunk of Trump coming up as well. But for now, smash the like button for...
Smash it with your iron rod.
Yeah, smash it with your iron rod for Kim, for Tony. Do it for yourself.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Little thumbs up. Break for Kim's news, and then, as I say, a chunk of Trump. Will also catch up with some emails and comments. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I'm Kim McAllister on the Mark Thompson Show. And yes, it is a little Trump-heavy day because Donald Trump could be looking at his second federal indictment. The former president revealed he received a letter telling him he is a target in the special counsel investigation into the 2021 Capitol riot.
There's never been anything like this.
Indeed. The target letter suggests Trump may soon face an indictment for his actions leading up to that incident. The GOP is pushing a resolution today condemning anti-Semitism, this after a leading Democrat's comment about Israel. The vote is in response to Washington Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal's claim that Israel is a racist state, a claim she later walked back. Congress, though, tomorrow is set to welcome the Israeli president. Mexico.
That's awkward.
Yeah.
Awkward. Hey, you know Pramila Jayapal, don't you? Yeah, I do. I do know her. I know who she is. Yes.
We don't like her.
Anti-Semite. Yes, nice to meet you.
In Mexico, they don't really like this whole floating border wall thing. Have you heard about this? This is the incoming foreign minister sending a letter warning that it's likely a violation of the U.S.-Mexican Water Treaty, which covers the Rio Grande. The Texas governor reportedly did not seek permission before deploying this technology, this floating border wall, in hopes of helping keep migrants from crossing the Rio Grande into the United States. But yeah, it's basically this floating row of barrels that was trying, they hope.
Yeah, that because people
away. Yeah,
right. People normally cross there, and that will interrupt that passage.
Mexico doesn't want those there. They say no.
They do this to me all the time. I don't know what the hell they do it for.
Every time I'm trying to cross, they interrupt it with those floating barrels. Right.
Florida's attorney general is blasting a letter sent by California's Governor Gavin Newsom asking the Department of Justice to investigate Governor Ron DeSantis's migrant flights. Attorney General of Florida, Ashley Moody, is laying out her response, and we have some sound.
It was incumbent upon me to point out you cited no law. You mentioned no other jurisdiction, whether it was led by a Republican or a Democrat that's doing the exact same thing, as being part of your requested investigation or litigation, and we'll fight back. It was incumbent upon me to point out you cited no law. You mentioned.
Yeah. So she's saying no, not good enough. DeSantis flew 2 groups of migrants to Sacramento, spurring Governor Newsom to demand the DOJ investigate and charge DeSantis with kidnapping. DeSantis claims it was not kidnapping as he continues to ship migrants to so-called sanctuary cities. Retail sales rose slightly in June, so more people out at the store spending a little bit of money. Good for the world, right?
Spend it, you want money in action.
Spend it. That's right. The Commerce Department says retail sales rose 0.2% last month, which is less than expected. Economists had forecast a 0.5% increase. Retail sales minus auto and gas rose 0.6% in June. The data indicates consumer spending continued to grow at a slower pace than it did last quarter. There is a new bill to bring night markets to California.
No.
Yeah, night markets. Have you been to one? San Francisco.
There's a night market in San Francisco?
Well, San Francisco is getting its first one in September.
Oh, I didn't. I was going to say, because I've never been to one in San Francisco. I've been to a night market. I've been to a night market overseas and traveling.
Right.
But have you been to one in America, in the U.S.?
No, I haven't.
Well,
but apparently it's a thing.
Okay.
So San Francisco
Mom's not going to take you to the night market
No,
if you
we're
kids
not going
don't
to the
behave.
Not go to the San Francisco night market, I can tell you that.
That's a different kind of night market in San Francisco.
We're not doing that. Nope. So yes, it's an assembly member wants to make it easier for other cities to put up night markets as well. His legislation would remove barriers in the permitting process so organizers don't have to reapply every few months. The night markets have been successful in other countries, Mark, as you say, but not so much in the United States. Do we want night markets?
I don't know. What
looks kind of cool.
Of course. I mean, it's got a kind of Christmassy look.
Yeah.
But what's the downside to having them? Are they dangerous or
crime?
I mean, is
it
that
depends
the problem?
on where the night market is, I suppose.
Right. If you're setting it up in the Tenderloin,
Right.
By the way, it's already set up in the Tenderloin,
Yeah.
as you were saying. I don't know. I'm not sure what's.
Would you go to the night market if it looks cute like that?
Maybe. I mean, if it, look, I don't understand the idea. Is the idea somehow that retail establishments that are open during the day are not available enough to consumers? So the night market is what? It's an event. It's
fun, right? It's
Oh, is that it? Is it?
Why are you doing this?
I don't know. I don't know why they're doing it. I really
gather tourists that people would come and flock to this. In the evening.
Maybe it's sort of like you're saying. It's cross between a flea market and like a carnival kind of atmosphere,
or maybe like a craft vendor sales booth, like a craft event.
I see. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to this one. I don't know if you've driven this way, but in Southern California, if you drive down Highway 110 at Harbor Freeway to the very end, you see this enormous sign. It doesn't say "Welcome to San Pedro." It is a giant advertising billboard that residents and officials say they consider to be an eyesore. They don't want it there, and they've tried to remove it for about 10 years now. The city of Los Angeles purchased the land underlying the sign some years ago, but the owner, Regency Outdoor Advertising, refused to remove the sign. So this all changed after the city sued, and the billboard is expected to be removed by tomorrow.
You
Sayonara,
people are crazy.
Yeah, that's that is. See you later, right? Sayonara.
Sayonara, sucker.
Yeah.
Nobody
Powerball!
won.
Come on, hook me up with a Powerball.
Won. An estimated jackpot of $640 million is up for grabs tonight in the Mega Millions lottery. The estimated top prize for tomorrow night's Powerball, $1 billion.
Wow.
This thing is ready to pop, people. Ready to pop. And lastly, I thought this was a
Tony, this thing is ready to pop, people, is a drop. I mean, without question, this thing is ready to pop, people, is an absolute drop.
Thanks, Tony.
So we'll grab it after the show. Go ahead.
Matt Damon says he agreed with his wife in couples therapy that he would take a break from acting unless Christopher Nolan called. Then Nolan offers Damon a starring role in Oppenheimer. Yes, Damon telling Entertainment Weekly he negotiated extensively with his wife that he would take time off unless Nolan, who he worked with on 2014's Interstellar, reached out. Damon plays Leslie Groves in Oppenheimer, the director of the Manhattan Project. And here he is at the premiere with his family, his daughters and his wife. And
And his resentful wife. Yes, very lovely. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to do what you got to do. And she did make the deal. So...
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, Daddy's, it's a big movie, and Daddy's got to, go make, some college education money.
That's right. It's got a lot of kids to put through school.
Yeah.
I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Mark Thompson Show.
I've come from regular stock.
I just want to find 11,780.
Did you really just do that? ABC knows that I feel like this. I've told them. It had nothing to do with them.
May the Spirit guide you in wisdom and grace.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
was great. I loved it.
60% of the time, it works every time.
Can you let him finish, sir?
Yeah, we are back on. Thank you for joining us from wherever you are. If you're listening on podcast, thank you for your support. We're a crowd-funded show, so it's always cool to have a crowd and to have some funding. Many of you have stepped up your support for the show. That really matters too. And
Smash it with your iron rod.
And you can smash it with your iron rod. The thumbs up helps us in the YouTube universe. Your engagement with the show, leaving comments, etc. I guess that all matters. Isn't that right, Tony? That's what you told me. Tony's the guy who.
Thanks, Tony. Yeah, it's the comments, it's the shares, it's all that stuff. It's
yeah, you got to share it if you can, please.
It's
share
a
it,
weird,
please.
weird world. I know.
Yeah, it's a strange, depressing, horrible world. Inside another strange, depressing, horrible world. Yes. Now, I wanted to acknowledge, though, in that spirit, just to spur the moment here, I hadn't planned on doing it, but I just got a note this morning. Every time an angel gets its wings, every time somebody steps up with Patreon and increases their monthly pledge.
No.
And Rebecca did it today. That's right. It was on Patreon. Big shout out. Big shout out to Rebecca. She was a $10 a month supporter. She's become a $25 a month supporter.
Rebecca, that's so nice.
I'm not gonna cry.
Not gonna cry, Rebecca, but that is pretty great. Gotta say.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. In fact, as I'd like to do this for all of you who have stepped up your monthly support on Patreon, if you'll give me a moment. I am ready now. All of you need to do nothing if you've stepped up your monthly support on Patreon for the show, which you can find at themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com. I would have thought that Kim or Tony would have put it up by now. I've been stalling for some time, but neither one did. There we go. I'd like for you to all
receive the rod of equity and mercy.
I want you to receive the rod of equity. And everyone who is a Patreon subscriber and follower,
receive the rod of equity and mercy.
If you click through at any level in Patreon, I want to once again
receive the rod of equity and mercy.
I bestow upon it
receive the rod of equity and mercy.
Of the rod of equity and mercy.
If I had that ruby crystal rod, your will flicking around in there, I don't think I'd be able to set it down. That thing is too cool.
It is cool, and I'm not flicking it. All right. I mean, there's certain processes, protocols.
It had a little flickage. And standards.
No, we have processes and protocols and standards. I'm not flicking.
Flung.
You don't flick the
receive the royal scepter.
The royal scepter you flick. You do flick the royal scepter, and they're often confused. But
receive the rod of equity and mercy.
The rod of equity and mercy, I do not flick. I handle it with the greatest respect. And I give it to all the Patreon
receive the rod of equity and mercy.
And the last thing I would say is,
I'm very jealous of it. I covet that.
I don't blame you. I feel quite lucky to be able to handle it, even as I do, and I try to use it with great discretion. And for PayPal supporters, your rod of equity and mercy is coming tomorrow. So it's, again, I can't just throw around the rod, and the equity and mercy has to be meted out. It has to be directed in very specific ways. We have processes and protocols, as you know. So all I'm trying to say is you will get it tomorrow if you're one of our PayPal supporters. And because I love my PayPal supporters, and they are, honestly, they're the backbone of this show. So now,
The Mark Thompson Show.
I know there's a lot of Trump coming. I know it's a big day in Trump land, and I don't want to overwhelm you with a lot of Trump legal stuff. So I actually have some Trump other stuff not related to the legal stuff that we will be talking to David Cay Johnston about. So David will be along in a few minutes. The Pulitzer Prize winner, the Trumpologist, best-selling author. But now I want to share other news out of Trumpland. Not the legal stuff. And we do it in a segment we call Chunk of Trump.
Open wide.
Ready?
Here comes your chunk of Trump.
It's my favorite food.
With your first bite, here's Mark Thompson.
I have a feeling it's going to be beautiful.
You may not believe it, but Donald Trump got a multi-million-dollar payout that has now become public knowledge because of a financial disclosure statement. Donald Trump went to do color commentary on a fight. That is right, a boxing match, a pay-per-view boxing match. 2.5 million is what he got. This is after he left the presidency, all right, when he's still out there being Donald Trump. It's a great deal to be Donald Trump. 2.5 million for calling a fight to comment on a boxing match. The financial filing revealed that since stepping down as president, Trump has amassed roughly $1 billion in earnings.
What?
Including profits from foreign ventures, fees collected from speaking engagements, and income from a Florida golf course. He reported several hundred sources of income in the initial financial disclosure that he filed in April, but revised the filing, including newly disclosed details that had not been known before, like dollar amounts for all of these sources of income. And when you add it all up, it comes to $1.2 billion. So
there's never been anything like this.
It's quite a significant, well, it's a significant amount of money.
Saudi Arabia pays cash.
The former president's most lucrative speaking engagement was the $2.5 million from Triller Legends 2 in Hollywood, Florida. He commented on a boxing fight between Evander Holyfield and Vitor Belfort.
Wow.
It was the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Wow, you really got a twisted way of memorializing that. They confirmed their payment to Trump, did Triller Legends 2. The payment made to Trump for his commentary was consistent with the fees typically received by celebrity commentators. Really? $2.5 million? The biggest earnings, if you're curious what went into that $1 billion, $284 million from the sale of the Trump International Hotel in Washington, D.C. You know, that was the place where everybody went and got reservations so that they could curry favor with the administration. He got $159 million from his golf course and $199 million across 4 partnerships with Hudson Waterfront Associates. Those are the top earning revenue streams for Donald Trump. So the other thing I will mention in Chunk of Trump is that he has made nice with Megyn Kelly. She's buried the hatchet with Donald Trump. It was great to see him, she said. In fact, Tony, my liege. Tony, do you have the Megyn Kelly remarks? Could you share them with the audience, please? This is Megyn Kelly.
Now, one of
Trump.
the most interesting things I did was have a private audience with former President Donald Trump. When he came into the arena, we met just one-on-one. And, there were, his team was standing nearby, but
sure.
He and I got a one-on-one together for the first time in years. And it was, frankly, great to see him. You know, all that nonsense between us is under the bridge. And he could not have been more magnanimous. You know, it's just, the thing about Trump is He commands the room. He walks in, and it's not just because he's former president now, because I knew him before that. There's just something about him. It's like an aura that sort of takes over the room. There's only one person you can look at. I remember when he was doing Celebrity Apprentice, and Geraldo was on it, and John Rich was on it, and John Rich, I think it was, invited me to an event for Celebrity Apprentice, and you went there, and same thing. Trump walks in, like the whole room turns. It's Donald Trump. Well, even more so now. He could not have been nicer or more generous, and had some interesting thoughts about the debates, whether he's going to attend. I wouldn't bet on it. I would not bet on him attending at least that first Fox News debate. If I had to put money on it, it's Trump, so he could change his mind. But that was my feeling in having talked to him, though I didn't commit one way or the other. And we had a great exchange. I thought it was interesting, as a journalist, as a woman, as a human who went through so much with Trump. We've had our ups and downs, it's fair to say. To me, there was a lesson in that kind moment between the two of us. And it was that even as a journalist, if you can take your own ego out of it, and I went through a lot as Trump attacked me for those 9 months. I've documented that in my book and elsewhere. But if you can take your ego out of it, and if you can be quick to sort of get past these confrontations and these negative experiences, you can open up such possibility for yourself. You can open up a field of wellness.
I got it.
Of positivity.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. If you can be quick to get past it. First of all, you weren't quick to get past it. I mean, that debate where he humiliated you or tried to humiliate you publicly in front of an entire nation, that happened some time ago, and then you carried that and I don't know. I think she's been dining out on the rancor or the tension between Trump and herself for quite a while now. She left Fox, as you know. She went to NBC. She's literally been dining out on the NBC dime. She got a huge deal out of NBC, and now she has a popular podcast. But all I'd say is that this just appears to me, it's, and I would get maybe quickly your thought on it, Kim, because you're a woman, and I found his remarks particularly targeted toward women. But that you could take that kind of derision and humiliation and then somehow come out on the other side and go, you know what? All that silly nonsense, she literally treated it as though it was nothing. Yeah. It's what people do as they curry favor with Trump, because they see that he has still political gravitational force, and he has media gravitational force. So from her standpoint, it's important to get back on the good side with Donald Trump. And from his standpoint, it is important to get back to some kind of connection with Megyn Kelly, because she can help carry his water for the next election. Quickly, Kim, anything?
So, right, yeah, I'm reminded of that adage, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. Right? He has already shown the world and Megyn Kelly exactly who he is, what he thinks of women. It's hard to be angry for a long time. It hurts yourself more than anyone else, right? So to still be angry and carry anger, I can see her saying it. I've forgiven him. I want to move on. I want to move past it. That's fine. But I hope that she hasn't forgotten who he is, because he made that very clear. And every woman should understand exactly what he thinks of us. That's what I'll say about that.
Well, many who are doing business with Donald Trump, I'll just call it that, political business or other business, are aware of who he is.
Yeah.
But their relationship is transactional. I mean, you had the story about the Georgia Secretary of State.
Right.
I mean, he's the focus of the investigation. He talks about the fact that Trump literally asked him to overturn the election.
Right.
And then when asked, well, would you vote for him again? Well, if it's a choice between him and Joe Biden, yes, I would.
Yes.
Because it's a transactional relationship you have with that vote, with that guy. You want to get the power. And that's that's the saddest and scariest part of all of this.
And maybe I'm, Pollyanna, but in doing so, you give up your own personal honor and integrity by making these transactional agreements.
Yeah, I think that is overrated these days by a lot of people. Personal integrity, how quaint that you would value that.
Go back to Petaluma, sister. Yeah,
that's right.
got it.
All right, Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It is a great honor and pleasure to talk to this guy on Tuesdays. He is a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporter, co-founder of DCReport.org, and, of course, best-selling author, and really the guy on Trump. He has been called a Trumpologist. I think that's actually a decent label for the great David Cay Johnston, everybody. Hi, David.
Hello, Mark.
David's what a day, I mean, and what a week for the former president. Now, I wonder if you could, point us toward magnetic north on everything going on.
Well, weeks are going to get worse going forward. Donald Trump revealed on his Truth Social that he received a target letter, he says Sunday night, from the Justice Department. More likely he actually got it on Friday. And a target letter means that the federal grand jury prosecutors are advising you that they believe they have grounds to ask for an indictment. They haven't done so yet. They give you a short period of time, in this case 4 days, to come and testify before the grand jury or present evidence that you think may show you didn't do anything wrong or certainly didn't do anything worthy of indictment. So I would expect possibly as early as Friday, but more likely Tuesday of next week. Grand juries often don't meet on Mondays. That Donald Trump will be indicted in what I expect will be a sweeping multi-defendant action about his failed attempt to overthrow the government of the United States. An attempt that we now know from material that's come from the lawyers for other witnesses and subpoenas and whatnot in the public record started well before the November 2020 election and reached its peak on January 6th when Trump told the mob to go down to the Capitol. Now, there are two charges we should watch for, Mark, because they have similar but very distinctly different meanings. Title 18 is the portion of the U.S. Code that's the criminal code. And Section 2383 says, quote, whoever incites, sets on foot, assists, or engages in any rebellion or insurrection against the authority of the United States or the laws thereof, or gives aid or comfort thereto, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned for not more than 10 years or both, and shall be incapable of holding public office. Now, that's critical. That's the one that would keep Donald Trump from being president, though I'm sure there will be some conservative lawyers who will argue that it violates the Constitution only for the case of the president because the conditions for being president are age of 40, citizen, natural-born citizen of the U.S., resident in the country for 14 years. There is a second possible charge. It's the very next statute in order, Title 18, Section 2384. And that's a conspiracy to impede the government, seditious conspiracy. It has a prison term of up to 20 years, but does not prevent one who has been convicted from holding office.
So that is a marked change from some of the other stuff that you've pointed out along the way. You've kind of taken pains to tell us that, you know, this guy literally could be president from prison. I mean, to state it in sort of the extreme.
Yes, no, absolutely. If he's convicted of the second charge and isn't charged with the first one, yeah, he can serve as president of the United States. By the way, there's a whole long discussion on CNN and another one on MSNBC about, well, how would you put a president in prison? And I thought both of them were some of the dumbest things I've ever seen on television. You know, the idea that we can't come up with a way to hold Donald Trump in a prison is absurd. First of all, you can put him in a military base. Secondly, you can take a portion of a prison and essentially he's the only person who's there except for his Secret Service detail. I mean, it's just an absurd discussion to even have.
Well, yeah. Now, and I'm seeing in the chat a lot of people are saying, "Hey, there's no way this guy Donald Trump's going to prison." But let's put that aside.
I think he may go to prison. He may get, if he's assuming he's convicted here, he may get home confinement. Hopefully at Trump Tower, not Mar-a-Lago. Presidents of other countries have gone to prison, other major countries. So I wouldn't say that's out of the box.
Well, this is definitely this is untilled soil, to say the least. But David, if you for a moment, I put the prison side thing aside and ask you about the pace at which things are proceeding in view of when the election is coming up and how you calibrate all of that. Will this stuff come to term? Will we birth some legal baby before this election or not?
Well, the Constitution has a right of speedy trial. That is a right of the government, of the people. It is not a right of the defendant. And Donald's lifelong strategy has always been delay, 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 delay. And he, in some cases, has delayed proceedings for well over a decade. Jack Smith's office has made it very clear that they want a definitive trial date. There's a hearing going on today before Judge Eileen Cannon, the Trump appointee, who you may recall in the Mar-a-Lago documents matter that led up to his arrest and indictment, said that he deserves special treatment, which I think is a pretty blatant violation of her constitutional oath. And she was slapped down by the circuit court she's under, which is very conservative. The prosecutors want a trial date of December 4th or December 11th. I don't think it'll happen then, but that means they want to go to trial January or February. This case is probably much more important in terms of Trump's future, because assuming they charge him with trying to overthrow the government, we need to get that resolved ahead of the election. Trump has claimed that holding a trial before the campaign is over, he couldn't get a fair jury. Well, then why would he get one after it's over? I mean, that makes no sense. Let's assume he loses. Let's assume he wins. What changes? That's just, absurd. In addition, Fannie Willis, the Fulton County DA, Fulton County overlays Atlanta. She's clearly moving ahead very quickly with 2 grand juries. And recall that she asked all the judges in the Fulton County Courthouse to schedule not few, but no trials or arraignments or hearings in the month of August, which suggests that she is bringing a big case. We've had members of the earlier grand jury who were allowed by Georgia law to talk about most of what took place, that they anticipated, one of them anticipated more than 24 indictments.
It's an overwhelming legal mountain that Trump is going to be forced to climb. And pardon us for perhaps being skeptical of the legal process, but it just seems as though he is, he's more effective at getting out of these jams than like a James Bond type character. I mean, he's really been able to elude, as you say, by delaying, by knowing the system, by paying off, by quietly settling. He's been able to elude any sort of real reckoning. So but David, it's in view of that I ask this question, notwithstanding all of what may face him legally. Were he to get in power again, were he somehow to win the election, I mean, there are ways it could happen, David. I mean,
it could.
And it's not so far-fetched. His second term, Bannon talks about it, and it's been widely publicized. I saw it in the New York Times. I saw it in The Economist. They kind of run down their plans for a second Trump term. And essentially they say, we weren't expecting, Bannon said this, we weren't expecting to win. We didn't really, in essence, have our act together on appointments, but it will be Trump loyalists across the board. We will get our agenda through, and no one will question the unitary power of the executive.
Right. Well, in my 2018 book, it's even worse than you think. I showed how Trump had very clearly said during the campaign, if you listen to him, and Steve Bannon very explicitly said, that we're going to destroy the federal government as you've known it. And they set out to do that. And I show how in some areas they were quite successful, particularly environmental laws and undermining those. But Donald had around him people with no experience in government. Steve Bannon, although he'd been a military officer briefly as a young man, had not ever had an experience in government. He brought in all these amateurs and posers because a lot of people didn't want to be associated with him. This time around, if Donald gets to the White House, his plans to make himself dictator that I've been warning about for more than 8 years will absolutely be front and center. The New York Times had a terrific story the other day about what they're planning to do if they get back into the White House, because they've communicated this to a lot of people. We will see Donald Trump try to position himself as dictator for life. He will prosecute his political enemies, whether there's cases there or not. He won't enforce all sorts of laws. It will be the end of American democracy as we have known it. And I don't think a lot of people just don't seem to appreciate that. They have bought Donald's claims that he alone can save us. And those claims shouldn't be ringing very well right now. We have the lowest inflation rate among the advanced nations of the world, significantly lower than, Canada, England, Germany, France, etc. We have a base unemployment rate of 3.6%, which economists have long argued that a 5% unemployment rate is pretty much full employment. We keep adding jobs. Wages have been rising faster than inflation now for 6 or 9 months. And we're starting now to fix up the infrastructure that we have let fall apart for 5 decades. And so it's kind of hard to understand why people who think critically would support Donald Trump. But that leads me to the other point, and that is half of Americans read at the level of a 6th grader and a fifth read at the level of 3rd graders. And I don't care if you're the smartest kid in your class in 6th grade, you don't have the facility to think at the level needed to tell that when Donald Trump is conning you. And that's what he is. He's the world's most successful con artist.
Well, his messaging is designed or coincidentally effective on the level at which you're talking about, which is to people who are not really doing a lot of deep digging. They're just looking for a chant, a bumper sticker, slogan, whatever. And I think that that's what we've seen, right? Lock her up, build the wall, Mexico's going to pay for it, whatever the stop the steal. I mean, I hate to say it, these are, outrageous things that he said. I mean, the Mexico's going to pay for it was so outrageous. And the wall itself seemed outrageous to me. I think as I may have mentioned to you before, I know I've mentioned on this show that he was going to get the appropriations for. I just didn't think, I thought, well, that's a great campaign thing to say, but you're not going to get that money. Congress is not going to approve the money to build some ridiculous wall.
He did do a bit of work on some parts of the wall, really a fence. And how did he do that? Well, military housing that has mold and water heaters that don't work and things like that. He took it from that. He took it from military hospitals for military families. He took it from things that were important to maintaining our national security, because if you don't have soldiers who feel that their families are safe at home, they're not going to be effective and they're going to get out as soon as their contract is up. And by the way, the DC report was the first to say that the We Build the Wall charity was a scam. We were way ahead of everybody else, months ahead of everybody else. And those people have now been convicted. Steve Bannon got away, even though he stole $1 million, because Trump pardoned him. By the way, that's the other thing Trump is promising, is to pardon all of his Confederates, all the people who are now in prison for trying to overthrow the government.
Well, that seems like it would be maybe top of the agenda.
Yes. Well, just imagine if the South had won the Civil War, what would have happened? I mean, that's right where we are. Jefferson Davis would have pardoned all of the traitors for whom we've surprisingly named all sorts of military bases and roads and buildings. And they would be in charge. And Trump could get back in. I mean, I thought it was very good chance he would get back in. He would get in 2016, warned about that in 2015, and he did. And I was mocked all over the place for that's ridiculous until, he had the Republican nomination locked up. And we need to have these trials before the election. It's absolutely crucial that we do so. And by the way, I know that some people I saw on Twitter and Threads today were saying, well, Trump just won't show up for the trial. That's not an option. A civil trial you don't have to show up for, but a criminal trial you are required to be there for every second. That's the standard set by the courts, every second. And if you don't show up, they arrest you and the bailiffs bring you in and seat you at the table.
Yeah, so you don't have the option. It's not like that civil suit, as you say. This is troubling. Let me just, because these words are mentioned here. James says, I hate to say it, but I prefer a civil war to a permanently entrenched dictatorship. I mean, a civil war is a bloody, awful, horrifying prospect. It devoid of, I mean, David, please, civil war to me, because it's thrown around a lot. You know what I mean? Like, we're on the verge of civil. Yeah, go ahead.
Right after January 6th, I wrote that we are in a low-grade civil war, the outcome of which is certain, which is that the losers around Trump are going to lose. But the 1860 to 65 Civil War, 1861 to 65 Civil War, every 40th American died. Think about that for a minute. 2.5% of the population, every 40th American died. And people didn't have assault rifles back then. If we actually get into a fighting civil war, the death toll will be vastly higher. And America will completely lose its leadership place in the world. I mean, because my wife, who was the CEO of a $600 million endowment, retired, we have been doing a lot of traveling. And because we never could before. We both worked 60-hour weeks. And I got to tell you, when I was talking to people in Iceland and Northern Ireland, Amsterdam last month, their views of the U.S. under Trump and their how could you elect someone who's so obviously crazy, who's so obviously stupid, who obviously is unqualified? They're just astounded by this. I remember one Dutch guy said to me that if a Dutch prime minister said, well, maybe we'll inject ourselves with bleach, they would have been ridiculed out of office the next day. There would have been no confidence vote. I pointed out we don't have a parliament. We have a Congress. It's a different system. But you don't want to have a civil war by any means whatsoever. And you don't want a tyrant who doesn't understand the Constitution, doesn't know the law, is deeply mentally ill. You don't want someone like that in the White House. And, we've had mentally ill people lead governments and rebellions all throughout history. This is not a surprising thing. It's just never happened in the United States until Donald Trump.
I just think about how far in our last minute or two, David, how far the presidency has fallen from the beginnings of this country. I was talking to Tom Hartman yesterday, and he's written a new book on the democracy and sort of the birth of our democracy and how democracy didn't, of course, originate with America at all, and how also it predated the Romans and the Greeks. I mean, it's been around in native peoples for a while. You could argue that it's sort of the natural state of things, that collectives of people evolve the society to these democracies. But anyway, we started talking about early presidents, and these guys, you can say what you want, and it definitely was a troubled time in some ways, but they were hanging on to ideals to craft a better nation. They really did try in those original documents to craft a system that was better for the nation. It was a selfless act on many levels. It feels as though we've fallen a long way from that.
Well, you've hit upon the key thing about Donald Trump. I mean, even John Adams, who was paranoid and wanted to lock up his opponents and got the Sedition Act passed, he had a sense of reverence for the ideals of our Constitution. Donald Trump doesn't have any of that. He has no capacity for empathy. He has no education. And remember, he claims to be the world's greatest expert on 22 subjects. I don't have to knock down anything except nobody is the world's greatest expert on more than one subject. And even the people who are top experts would say, well, I don't know that much. But
he may be the world's top on grifting, though. He's right up there. He's a medalist. He's on the medal stand somewhere.
Yeah. Donald is the most successful con artist in world history. I'll absolutely give him credit for that. We currently have in the White House a president who clearly knows what he's doing. He's the first president since Lyndon Johnson, with the exception of Jerry Ford, who didn't have any authority to do anything during his 2.5 years as president because he wasn't elected. He was just a placeholder. If he gotten elected, things would have been different. So for the first time since Lyndon Johnson, we have a president who knows how Capitol Hill works. He understands geopolitics because for so many years he was head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. And remember, he's the one who went and literally confronted the genocidal maniacs in the war in Bosnia. At great personal risk. And he's rebuilt our NATO alliance. He's expanded NATO. He's managed to prosecute the war in Ukraine without getting it blown up into something bigger and worse. I think he should be more aggressive than he's been. And he's produced an economy, 13.2 million jobs in 2.5 years. Even if you just count the first 3 years of Trump, he produced fewer jobs per month on average than Barack Obama did after the economy turned around in the spring of 2010. Just as you shouldn't blame George W. Bush for the economy he inherited, same with Barack Obama, anybody else. It takes about a year to get your presidency in place. But this tremendous economic performance greatly restored our position on the world stage. And this madman, this nutcase, who has all of these followers who are filled with grievances and anger, and the racism is now right up front. There's the racism, the anti-LGBTQ bigotry, the fear of the other is right up front, Mark. I think the American people are going to prove to be smarter than Donald Trump, but I don't discount the prospect that they won't. It's really important to make sure that the speedy trial requirement in the Constitution is upheld and that Donald Trump is tried before the election on the January 6th case, and I would hope on the Mar-a-Lago documents case, and he should be treated just like anybody else. And if somebody listening says, well, why does he have all these different charges they're piling on? It's because he committed lots of different crimes. That's like saying, well, yes, why are you prosecuting me for bank robbery across 5 states? Just because I drove across 5 states.
You can find him, his writings. You can find him on all the different, everything from MS to CNN and on. At dcreport.org, he is the co-founder and here so generously on Tuesdays. David, it's a great pleasure. Thank you.
Take care, Mark.
Good to see you. David Cay Johnston, everybody. Yeah.
I've told you it's never easy being in this business.
The Mark Thompson Show. The Mark Thompson Show.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson?
You people are crazy.
How would you have this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
I cannot believe it.
Whoever
is reducing this thing has no idea what they're doing.
Supposing you brought the light inside the body.
What are the porn stars doing, Mark?
All right, everybody. Wow. Love my David Cay Johnston. Really, really cool to talk to him. We still have a big half hour of show. There's actually a twist, sort of. I don't know if you'll have this in your news, but if you don't, Kim, I will have it afterward. The Anchor Brewing Company may have life after all, huh?
Thank goodness.
Yeah. Well, they were purchased by Sapporo. Anchor Brewing Company is a big local brewing company and sort of a cornerstone of, of San Francisco bar rooms, certainly. And it's a piece of San Francisco, if I can just maybe put it that way. So that, as San Francisco is gutted of a lot of the charm and magnificence based on the fact that we're seeing the smash and grabs and the homelessness problem and a lot of the problems that are affecting other cities too, but they are amplified in San Francisco largely, I think, because of the cost of housing. It's so expensive to live in San Francisco, and then, you're stepping over fecal matter and all methods of crap, other crap, not literally, in the city, and it's dangerous. So when you add into that brew the Anchor Brewing Company going out of business, like another San Francisco iconic business going away, it's kind of a big deal. So now a local concern may buy Anchor Brewing. We'll talk about that in the next half hour too. If you're just joining us, we do come from originally a San Francisco radio show. We migrated it onto YouTube, and that's why we are somewhat Bay Area centric in at least checking off on a lot of things going on in the Bay Area. We have great sources in the Bay Area too, which is sort of another strength, I think, that we have. So we try to play to that. But obviously, as you've just heard, if you've been watching and seeing things for the last hour and a half, we've done a lot of national stuff, and there's a lot of national stuff to do. So we try to be flexible that way. Smash the like button like a boss.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Smash it with your iron rod. Tony, you okay?
Thanks, Tony.
Tony's
yeah, I'm fine.
You're okay. Yeah, okay.
Hanging out over there. He's all right.
I always worry about Tony.
Awesome.
All right.
Thanks, Tony.
Okay.
Not dead yet.
All right. Tony's
close,
but he's yeah. Tony's working it hard. Kim's news as we continue. Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister, and let's get to the news. Not to bombard you with old Trumpy Trump, but yeah, here's Trumpy Trump. Donald Trump today announcing he received a letter telling him he is a target in a special counsel, Jack Smith's criminal investigation into efforts to overturn the 2020 election, suggesting that he may soon face another incident. In response to this, which we've been talking about on the Mark Thompson Show, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy noted this comes as Trump is up in the polls and claimed the government is being weaponized against Biden's top opponent in the 2024 presidential election.
I think I'm the most honest human being, perhaps, that God ever created.
Yeah. Okay.
The investigation into the Gilgo Beach murders in New York continues as officials build their case against suspected serial killer Rex Heuermann. The search for answers expanding to South Carolina, where FBI agents say they recovered Heuermann's older Chevy Avalanche truck. Evidence teams have been back in Heuermann's Massapequa Park home as well. Most Democrats are expected to vote yes on a resolution today declaring Israel is not a racist or an apartheid state. That is what House Democratic Caucus Chair Pete Aguilar told reporters today, saying that there is unity within the party with regard to Israel. The resolution prompted by Washington Representative Pramila Jayapal's comment claiming Israel is racist, a claim that she later walked back. The Pentagon confirms that an American soldier being held in North Korea is being sent back to the United States. Why? What did he do? Yeah, disciplinary reasons. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin told reporters today the service member crossed the demilitarized zone without authorization. You can't do that. Austin said officials are working to address the incident and notify the soldier's family. This is
My
not
bad. I'm sorry.
not on a tourist trip, people here.
More than a my bad on that one.
International incident. Come on. A lot of people have been waiting for this to reopen. Overnight camping back at California's oldest state park. Big Basin Redwoods has been recovering ever since a wildfire 3 years ago destroyed nearly every structure there. The campground was severely damaged. It is finally open on the coastal side in Santa Cruz County. It will be reinstated as a horse camp once equestrian trails are restored as well. This is one of they call it glamping, where you can rent the canvas tent. They have campsites where you can pitch a tent, and then they have the tent that they provide for you. So there you go.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
And as Mark had mentioned earlier, a little change at In-N-Out. The California chain changing guidelines. All In-N-Out burger employees in the state wanting to wear a mask have to switch to N95 respirators. The company says they provide the highest level of protection from COVID and other viruses, but employees at In-N-Outs in Nevada, Arizona, Utah, Texas, and Colorado don't even have that option. Starting August 14th, masks will be banned so employees can show off their smiles and facial features. Yeah, I don't know if you saw this.
That's what they say. They just are. It's a political thing, but that's certainly, they're using that as the fig leaf to cover it. Like, we just think it's important for our employees to show off their smiles and their facial features.
Would you like fries with that? Smile, wink, wink.
Exactly.
This is crazy. Federal officials are investigating after an airplane emergency slide was found in the backyard of a Chicago home. Officials say the slide is from a United Airlines flight. It caused damage to the home on Monday afternoon. The homeowner said he heard a boom, went outside, saw the slide in his mother's garden. The slide had hit part of the house, damaged the roof, a downspout, a window screen, but nobody was hurt. They dragged it from the back of the house.
If you get it in order, you get extra points.
The roof, the downspout, and the window screen.
The FAA is working with United to figure out what exactly happened. Why did the slide fall off the plane and land in a neighborhood?
Wow.
Here's a question. You tell me what your answer is at the end of the story. Fix it or tear it down, right? Here's this building. See it right here? You can see it kind of on the left there. Look at the waves. Yeah, talk about beachfront, right? This is the Kahana Sunset condos in Maui.
Wow.
When this condo complex was built in 1971, it was 15 feet away from the waves. Then in 2014, it was only 8 feet away from the waves. And today you can see it's 0 feet away from the waves.
Wow.
What can you tell us about the scene?
Well, the waves are 0 feet away, Larry.
The building is now vacant. It is unsafe, declared unsafe. They've got a seawall there, a high seawall, and that is the only thing separating the ocean from the Kahana Sunset. It's erosion, it's sea level rise, and it has some Maui residents saying, listen, it's time for this condo association to stop fighting it. They've tried fixing this place. They want to keep pouring money into fixing this place, but they say the building needs to be removed because of the threat to public health and safety, and it would restore beach access to this beach, well, what's left of this beach as well. But yeah, so there's a big fight to restore it or to rip it down.
Wow.
It's about as bad as it can possibly get.
Well, actually, it can get worse. The water is rising, and it's going to inundate that entire structure. You have to tear it down. You have to tear it down. It's something that so many waterside communities are facing. Oceanside communities are facing it. We're facing it in San Francisco, facing it around California in so many different ways. You can't fight it.
No matter how many times you try to fix this building, Mother Nature is going to pound with waves. Storms will come. This place is too close to the water. It's toast.
Yeah, sadly, it's true. It's
the answer is tear it down.
Got to. Yeah.
And lastly, more tourists are being caught defacing Rome's Colosseum. What? A 17-year-old girl from Switzerland was seen reportedly carving her own initials into a wall of the ancient monument by a tour guide, this according to Rome's local military police force. The next day, another 17-year-old from Germany was caught apparently doing something similar. Each could be fined as much as 15,000 euros, about 17,000 US dollars. They could risk 5 years in jail. It's the same consequence a British tourist from last month is facing as well. Why do people keep trying to carve their names into this ancient monument?
This a copycat thing, or was it? This is just it's hard to know, right? I mean,
maybe now it becomes a thing. You know,
yeah,
now
that's
that
I
this
guess
one
what I'm
guy's
trying.
caught.
I think you hit her with the 15K fine, and maybe even, I don't know if you put her in jail at all, but you definitely, I mean, you do have to do something to brush this back. It's such a, what an effed up thing. Hey, look, it happens not only in Rome Coliseum. Go to Yosemite, go to Muir Woods, go to all of these different places. You do find people, you know, scraping their initials into all of this stuff. There's just,
These are places we should be trying to protect.
Yeah.
Not places that we should be defacing.
It bums me out. You know, it really does. But
well, on that note, I'm Kim McAllister, and this is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Feels great.
When they raided Mar-a-Lago, God didn't like that.
That's pretty wild about that tourist group that was then joined by that soldier. This is in North Korea. Isn't that what happened, Kim?
With the crossing into the demilitarized zone?
Yeah, crossing into the demilitarized zone. It's just wild. The soldier was sent home when he inexplicably, which is a ding word, joined a group of tourists headed to the demilitarized zone.
You're not on a tourist trip, pal.
He'd been disciplined during his deployment. He was not wearing handcuffs when he was escorted by military police as far as they could go.
They say he was on a private tour of the joint security area in the demilitarized zone when he suddenly ran across the border.
So
he was lucky they got him back, honestly, because if you run across the border into Kim Jong-un territory, I mean, you could be in a prison for the rest of your life.
Absolutely right. The soldier who had been disciplined during his deployment was not wearing handcuffs when he was escorted by military police as far as they could go, a security checkpoint at Incheon Airport, a commercial airport about an hour and a half away from the DMZ that separates South Korea from the communist country of North Korea. But instead of continuing alone to the gate, the soldier tagged along with a group heading for Panmunjom, which is the joint security area in the middle of the tense border guarded by North and South Korean soldiers. When the soldier took off, the United Nations Command Security Forces that had been escorting the tour chased him, but could not catch him in time. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said that they're still trying to piece together what exactly happened. The soldier is currently in the hands of the Democratic Republic of Korea. So we're closely monitoring and investigating the situation and working to notify the soldier's next of kin and engaging to address this incident. The White House also monitoring the situation.
They say he was serving time in a military detention in South Korea after having some kind of fight with locals, and he was being sent out of the country. After going through a security door at Incheon National Airport to leave, he returned and managed to join this border tour group, which is where he made a run for it into the demilitarized zone.
Exactly.
What a bonehead.
Well, I'm unclear, though, whether or not they have him or not. He's in custody or not?
Yeah, he's in custody. He's being returned to the United States.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. So there you go.
I'm Shadow Stevens.
No, I was looking for.
My bad. I'm sorry.
That's what I was looking for. Or
Y'all can all go to hell, and I'm going back to
I'll
Texas.
take that too. All right. Look, I wanted to mention a couple of things. I did want to follow up on that Anchor Steam story because I think it's wild. So essentially, Anchor Steam was purchased, as you may know, even though you may associate it with being a San Francisco brewing company type local, and it was local for so long. But Sapporo bought it, right? Isn't that what happened? I think in 2017. I forget what year. But there's renewed hope that San Francisco's iconic Anchor Brewing Company, which closed last week because of financial struggles, could once again begin producing its famous beer. More than 24 different investors have expressed interest in buying this now shuttered 127-year-old brewery. The dude who is behind it all is a venture capitalist named Mike Walsh. I love the beer, he says. I love the brand. I live 2 blocks up the hill, he said. When I first heard the news that it was closing, I was pretty bummed out, but then I was pretty excited. Walsh and his network of investors are hoping to snap up Anchor when the parent company Sapporo liquidates its assets.
I guess there have been 24 inquiries from local people into buying this brewery, which it's nice to see that people want to keep it open.
Yeah, he wants to allow other fans of the beer to buy in too, is what he says. When people can invest as little as $100, who may be passionate about the beer, why not own a piece of it, he says.
I'd kick in $100 to own part of Anchor Brewing. I'm not even a beer drinker, but just to keep a business open that's been a mainstay in San Francisco for more than 100 years, sure.
That's what we ask people to do here. Mm-hmm. We ask them to kick it in to keep us open. I mean, really. Yeah. If they could keep it open, it would be great for everybody, said someone who was walking out with a case of Anchor beer in hand. You know, they were talking to various people on the streets. They call that man on the street in the world of television news and radio news. MOS is what we call it. You're going to go out and get some MOS. Usually send out a PA to do it or something. Or once in a while a reporter, but back in the days when you had more people populating newsrooms, you send somebody else out to do it while the reporter works on something else. It's MOS. But here's why I mention it. Because sometimes MOS is really hard to get. People don't want to talk to you on camera.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's not like, oh, that's easy. Nah, it's not. There's a way to do it. For example, if you ask, I don't know what your experience has been, Kim, but this is mine. I've done a lot of MOS. You know, when you're coming up in you have to do a lot of. If you ask someone ahead of time, hey, do you mind if we ask you a couple of questions? The answer is no.
No.
I don't. Yes, I do mind, and no. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you need to come.
No.
You have to come at it at a. Here's what you do, and you don't say.
What do you think of the high price of gas?
Right. That's how you do it.
Done.
You've got to come right in with the question. You are landing on the flight deck right away. You're not asking if you can land on the flight deck. You are landing. And so
I've been sent on some of the stupidest MOSs. I'm telling you.
God.
What do you think of all this rain?
Yeah. Oh, that's too good. Anyway, that's the story on Anchor Brewing and
The Mark Thompson Show.
And man on the street stuff. By the way, just speaking of the Bay Area, and then I'll move on. 49ers Hall of Famer Steve Young is going to join Menlo School's girls flag football coaching staff.
That's right.
Come on, Steve Young. He's going to coach flag football for the girls. The school announced that Young will be an assistant coach, and fellow former 49ers quarterback John Pay will be the team's head coach.
They're going to win.
Baby. The California Interscholastic Federation approved girls flag football, and this is the first season of it. And this is a high school sport, and it'll be a wonderful opportunity, they say, for young women to show their talent, says Steve Young. Football is a great team game that teaches tremendous life lessons. I want to help build women's flag football. It's cool because there's, you know, you don't have any of that CTE stuff. You don't have injuries. The physical injuries, by the way, can be definitely showing up on a flag football field, but not on the level that they do, of course, when it's tackle. Pay, the head coach, and as mentioned, the former quarterback of the Giants, of the Niners, already the girls' basketball head coach for Menlo School. That's his alma mater. He won his 400th game for them in December. He's helped the team to 4 section titles. Very, very cool. So congratulations, Steve Young. Yeah.
It must cost a lot to go to Menlo School. I mean, they have some top-notch, coaching staff, talent there. It must be one of those schools that, is out of my
I'm
reach.
guessing it's not a...
it's not your run-of-the-mill.
Yeah, sadly, it's not your run-of-the-mill public school, I wanted to mention, you mentioned Yosemite and how that glamping area is reopening. Was it at Yosemite, I thought?
That's Big Basin in the Santa Cruz County area.
Oh, sorry, Santa Cruz, because I did want to mention Yosemite. There's a wildfire burning at Yosemite right now, and good news, bad news for people going there. The good news is that the park is open, roads are open, and only a few trails are closed. But the bad news is that smoke from that wildfire has pushed air quality levels in the valley to unhealthy.
Well, they're letting it burn because they're hoping that it can help them get rid of a forested area, like thin out some forest in this area. And it's slow-moving fire. So despite the smoke, they're kind of letting this one go. They're not attacking it like they normally would.
Yeah, Kim is so right about this. It's called confine and contain. They use natural barriers and trails and controlled fires to secure and strengthen natural fire barriers. Under favorable condition, it allows the fire to move naturally across the landscape, they say, providing ecological benefits to plants and wildlife while also meeting protection objectives to minimize risk to people and infrastructure. So
What?
Well, I think essentially it's a controlled burn they're letting it burn. I think we've covered it, but I wanted to give you a sense. There's the area affected. Northwest of North Dome, and there's always a threat of falling limbs and fire-damaged trees and burning logs and, stump holes and smoke conditions that can cause respiratory problems. There's poor visibility because of the smoke in places.
Geez,
Hot
let's all go to
ash.
Yosemite. That sounds
Yeah,
great.
I mean, that's right. And you're not going to see, right, it's not
Summer
exactly.
vacation.
Please continue. It sounds great.
Oh my God.
Okay, all right. Finally, I just wanted to mention, in our last couple of stories, that Joe Manchin is, yesterday he's in New Hampshire with a group. It's essentially an exploratory committee for a presidential run. They call him a moderate Democratic senator. I mean, I don't know. I think these labels really aren't accurate, but he is a Democrat, small d Democrat. He takes more fossil fuel money than anyone else in Congress, Republican or Democrat. He'll take part in a town hall hosted by the group No Labels to help launch a new, quote, common sense platform on immigration, healthcare, gun control, and the economy and other issues that he believes are being ignored. This No Labels, they're Republicans, okay? Let's, sorry about the No Labels thing. I know it's a great label to have, No Labels, but you are GOP. All right. Manchin, who's facing re-election to the Senate next year, but has not yet said whether he'll run, will be in his familiar political sweet spot, which is staking out ground to the right of his party, which is the Democrats, right? And attracting a political spotlight that he uses to maximize his influence. Again, he's got the political spotlight now. Last year, for example, grabbed the spotlight with the refusal to back that climate tax and social safety net plan, right? Biden's Build Back Better agenda. And The West Virginia Democrats' model has served him well, they say, with repeated statewide wins in one of the most conservative pro-Trump states in the nation. But he has Democrats doubly nervous about how any presidential bid could roll Biden's re-election. Oh, I see. I think that should be royal Biden's re-election. And how a decision not to seek re-election himself would hand Republicans a Senate seat in 2024. So here's the double bind, right? If he doesn't run for the Senate, you lose that Senate seat in West Virginia. No question about it. And if he does run, you are putting pressure on Joe Biden, which he doesn't need. No Labels, which is, again, this is the group that is hosting these town halls. They say that they're considering a third-party unity ticket with one Republican and one Democrat in November of 2024. And they'll make a final decision next year based on whether they feel that there's a viable chance of victory. But for now, Manchin's non-committal, and everybody's worried on the Democratic side of the ball because of his lack of commitment. The Department of Justice has asked for tougher January 6 sentences for the Oath Keepers.
There you go.
They are taking the unusual step of appealing criminal sentences. Remember, we talked on this show, and I've seen it in the chat. People aren't happy. They're like, oh, what is it? They get these guys on. They're trying to overthrow the government. They're beating the crap out of police officers. There's all sorts of mayhem and rioting and violence. And these prison terms are
2 months in probation or whatever. Yeah.
Now, these are the Oath Keepers who have gotten more prison sentence, more stringent or tougher prison sentencing than that. For example, that Stuart Rhodes got 18 years. And some of the other Oath Keepers, a couple of the other ones got, serious time too. But the government, they want more time than the 18 years.
And they're right. I mean, this is
I agree
treasonous.
with them. Right.
This is treason. In the olden days, you'd be hanging from a rope.
It's treason, my lord. Please include my lord when you're making a speech about treason.
I mean, don't you think it's 18 years for treason against America? No, that's put you in prison and throw away the key.
The woman speaks the truth, my lord. Thank you. I'm still working it out. I'm workshopping it, but it's coming along. Look, here are some realities. I was reading in on this, and the DOJ, great that they're going back. The federal prosecutors are challenging the Oath Keeper sentences. The reality is it is rare for them to do this, and it's also unlikely that they'll be successful. But the seditious conspiracy, which is what that Stuart Rhodes was sentenced for, they feel worth going back for, worth going back for more. Present terms to the insurrectionists, way short. Way too short is true. And the argument the Justice Department is making is that they are an ongoing threat and peril to this country and to the republic and to the very fabric of this democracy. So the Rhodes sentence is the longest. That 18-year sentence is the longest. I was looking at and seeing a 12-year for Kelly Meggs. They wanted 25 years for Rhodes. And they got lower sentences, There will be arguments that they'll make on appeal, but it's unusual and viewed as unlikely to be successful. So that's the latest on that. But I did want to let you know that because I know we talked about that they are doubling back on it.
OCB wants us to know no one has been charged with treason.
No, there is. It's seditious conspiracy. That's what they. It's not. Yeah, that's right. No one has been charged with treason, my lord. It's seditious conspiracy. It's a quick script fix. Don't worry about it. We fixed it.
Isn't it almost the same thing, though? Because treason is in times of war. Seditious conspiracy is not in times of war. Isn't that correct?
I
think that's how it works.
It is.
Google it.
I think that it has to do with actual being in league with an enemy power. I don't know if it's enemy or treason involves being in league with enemy power. Treason is this squishy thing. Even the seditious conspiracy is hard to prove, but treason is really out there. You know, it's thrown in to a lot of conversations, particularly during the Trump administration. But I think if you Google treason, aiding an enemy, there you go. That's it. Thank you. I'll take my applause off the air if you will. Oh, okay, I'll take them on the air. I'll take the applause on the air. Anyway, Bay Area drivers may soon get automatic tickets for going 11 miles over the speed limit. We told you here.
What? Stop it. That's
Don't
not
tell
cool.
me I didn't tell you.
You don't even have to see an officer.
All of our Bay Area drivers, you could get a bill and you'll have to pay it. The speed safety system is going to capture images of the rear license plate of vehicles that are traveling 11 miles an hour or more over the posted speed limit. Notices of violation shall only be issued to vehicles based on that evidence.
Speed cam.
Yep. It's coming to a neighborhood near you. San Jose, Oakland, Glendale, LA, Long Beach, and the city and county of San Francisco. Raise some money to clean up those streets.
So is it just on city streets or is it on freeways as well?
I believe that it is cities and counties.
Oh, wow.
Oh, I believe they can make it work on freeways. They will.
Oh, yeah.
Let's be honest.
Can you imagine 11 miles over everybody would get a ticket. I mean, forget the left lane. What's the point?
That's what they want. They want everybody to get a ticket.
Right?
You know, I have to go back to Washington, D.C. to see my folks. And I'm mentioning that because every time I do, the whole place is a speed trap. It's all a speed trap. It's unbelievable. And they don't wait for 11 miles an hour. That sounds great to me. I have tons of if you just go a little bit over the speed limit, bam, they light you up. And there's no, I think I've mentioned this before, but I'll just mention it again. 4-lane road on both sides, and the speed limit is 30 miles an hour. It's 4 lanes. It drives like a freeway. I grew up on these roads. And now if you go 35 miles an hour on that road, even if you're the only car at night, and I was the only car at night, I was coming back from the hospital, seeing my dad, it's 3 a.m., and there's nobody else on the road, and they light you up, man. You get those tickets.
That's wild.
I don't like it. I really don't like it. But then again, let me give you the argument for it. I mean, if you can slow people down, there'll be fewer accidents. Yeah. Definitely true. But as a speeder, I will tell you that as a careful speeder, I'll tell you that the news is not good. Tony, I could go another hour, to be perfectly honest.
I know.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I could go all week continuously, Tony. There's a fire that burns inside me, my lord.
Save it for tomorrow.
All right. What do I need to do before I say farewell?
Got 2 things to give out.
All right. We like to recognize and acknowledge people who help us out every day with super stickers. And Denise Chandler, what up, Denise?
Thank you.
Shout out.
Big shout out.
Yeah.
Thank you for the 20, Denise. That's so cool. Denise?
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Also, Denise.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And Wes, always supporting.
Yeah.
Thank you, Wes. Big shout out to our Wes.
Huge thank you.
I love that. I must say, it's hard. It's hard to leave my friends every day, but alas, I must. Tomorrow, the magical John Rothman, the sexy fool. Did you see he's going to have some competition for mayor if he wants to run for mayor?
No, I saw it.
Yeah, I will tell you about that tomorrow. If he wants to, John's kind of like sniffing around being mayor of San Francisco. And now he's got some competition. Yeah. Vicky and Sausalito, indeed. Farewell, my lord. I love it. Nikki's show begins right now over on the Nikki Maduro channel. And I'll remind you that beginning August 1st, Nikki's show moves to 9 a.m. My show moves to 11 a.m. start. So we'll be on 11 to 1 on the West Coast. 11 a.m. we start.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Thank you all for your support, for joining us today. A lot of fun. Back tomorrow, and until then, bye-bye.